quickly turn on the recording. All right. Okay, so I made a small agenda for today, and this is what I was thinking that we can work on. I wanted to show you how you can save an XLAMP file, this one, and I also wanted to show you how we can create pivot table. The pivot table example is a very large example and one of the most practical ones because when you're automating tasks, one of the most important things that you do is to make a pivot table. It's going to be a little difficult, but we'll take it up as a challenge and see how to work with this, right? But before that, I want to show you how an XLAMP works. Now, if I go back to my APR30 macro that we created yesterday, so we did a number of things, right? So we let the file open. Okay. If you remember, we had these different macros. We had one for hiding numbers. We had one for formatting a table. We had one for creating a formula using relative. Now, imagine this, that you want that every single person in your team, so let's say you're working in a setup where there are 15 people working in the organization, and you want that everybody should have access to this macro. Now, what are the options that you have? One, of course, is that you can save this macro, send it to somebody. They will also have to copy and paste it. But what is the challenge here? The challenge is that they need to know what Visual Basic is, right? And most of the time, you don't want the user to bother with going to File, Options, Developer tab, and enabling it. So this is what in finance we usually do. We deploy it to different people in the team in the form of an XLAMP. And XLAMP is a special type of an Excel file that allows you to share macros. So we'll do a small example. You notice my hide my numbers macro is already there. So what I do is I want this macro to become a permanent part of Excel. So we click on File, and then we click on Save As. And in the last 2 days, I told you that all macros should be saved in a macro-enabled workbook. But if you want to create your own add-in, right, which you want to distribute to multiple people, you can select this option called Excel add-in, and the file type is XLAMP. The older one used to be XLA, but nobody uses that anymore. You will find XLAMP. Now notice this carefully. Currently, I'm on my desktop, but the moment I select an XLAMP, the folder changes automatically. Why? This is very important because XLAMP is a special type of a file which you're not supposed to put wherever you want on your computer. You're supposed to put it in a designated folder. And what is that designated folder? Your directory, users, the username, app data, roaming, Microsoft, and add-ins. So if I open this, you notice I already have another add-in that I have created, which has been put here. Okay. So this is session APR30. I'll just click on save. And let me close everything. So if you notice, I don't have any other Excel files open on my system right now. Now, how do I enable that add-in on my computer? So very simple. You open any Excel file. Okay. You click on developer, and then you click on Excel add-ins. But the problem is, remember, if the user does not have the developer tab enabled, then does that mean that he will have to enable the developer tab? Not necessarily. You can click on File, Options at the very end. Now we want to add a add-in to our system. So I click on this add-ins button. And if you notice the add-in that I created, okay, that is an Excel add-in. So if I scroll through, do you see this? It says session APR30. So this is an add-in that I have created, which has my own set of macros in it. But this is not enabled right now. So you notice it says it is disabled. How do you enable it? You say manage Excel add-ins and go. And here you notice that my add-in is visible, which is session APR30. I can just click on this button and I press OK. So what exactly does that do? Now this means that if I go to macros and I say all open workbooks, the macro is still not visible. But why do you think the macro is not visible? The macro must be there in the add-in. See this. When I go to Visual Basic, do you see this? My APR30 XLAMP has been loaded here. This one. So it says command button 1.click. It says these are my modules that I have. Hide my numbers. But then why is that macro not visible on my current Excel workbook? Any ideas? So I hope the process was clear. We created an XLAM which had a list of my own macros in it. I put it in a designated folder and then I have enabled it on my Excel file. The problem is that this does not give you the ability of accessing that macro. So if you notice, when I click on macros here, it doesn't show me that particular macro that we have. But when I go to developer and Visual Basic, you notice that that XLAM is already visible here. So why do you think we cannot access that macro now? See, it says VBA project, and it tells me that all the modules can be seen. Okay. Now the reason for this is that even though you have uploaded the XLAM, that macro will still have to be copied in your current workbook. Now this is an approach that I like because it's very easy. Think about it. This file called session APR30.xlam will always be there on a user's computer, right? Let's say 15 people in your team all put this file called session APR30.xlam. They will all have this XLAM file with them. How do you run the code? Whenever you want to run the code, you can simply copy one of these codes for that moment, put it in my current workbook. So I can just insert it in my module. And this way, that macro becomes available to me. Now, I know what you're thinking, but this still requires me to copy and paste. But remember what I told you, it is always advisable to only use the macro when and where you need it. Otherwise, what will happen is that there will always be a risk that something wrong will happen. Because remember, once a macro does a task, it cannot be undone. Now, if you are curious to know how can you create your own ribbon, that's not in the scope of a 6-hour training. This is something that I did after 4 years of working on Excel. But I just show it to you how it works. So you call this creating a ribbon, okay? So VBA create ribbon. So do you see this? You can actually add your own macros to a new tab called My Macros. And then you notice all these macros can be put inside that new tab that you have created. How do you make something like this? Now this requires you, the reason I'm not covering this today is that this requires you to use XML, right? So this cannot be done on Visual Basic for application. This can only be done on XML, which is a different language. Why do you need to know this? Because, in case somebody asks tomorrow, oh, why can't I put my macro on my ribbon? You at least should have an answer as to why it cannot be done. Because to do that, you need to use XLAM. So there is a software available. It's called the Custom UI Editor. Right? It's called the Custom UI Editor. It was created in development in partnership with Microsoft. And if you notice, you can if you just Google Custom UI Editor, you can just click on the first link that opens. And here you notice you can download. It's a very small application. This is how it looks. And this is an application that allows you to take an Excel file and then make modifications in XML. To show you how it looks, I'm just going to open an Excel file. Let us say my new macros file. And if you notice, you can create something like this. Now this, remember guys, is not Visual Basic. This allows you to run a macro. So if you notice, this on action will allow you to access a macro created on VBA, but you will still have to create it on XML. Should you learn it? Personally, I don't think you should, because we are not working as IT professionals where our job is to sell a product. All that we need to do is to create a macro to automate our tasks. Let's say typically you work in finance, so you want to share it with other people, and you can very easily do that using an XLAM. Can it be done? Absolutely, right? So if you notice, So just to show you how the final result would look, the final result looks like this. As you can see, I have my own add-in called Havisham Consulting, and then I've created different macros here, and then I have connected all those macros to my tab. But it's my very, very strong recommendation. This, remember, is something for 2-3 years I knew that I could do this. It is possible, but I never put my hands on it because I wanted VBA to be very comfortable. Once I got very comfortable with Visual Basic, then I said, okay, now that I can write my own codes, let me now see how I can create a tab. So whenever you see somebody making this, even though you will see very few people who create this, remember this has been done using XML, right? So just something I wanted to get out of the way because it's important to know how to share your files with others. So what I've shown you is you save it as an XLAM file. That XLAM file is just a file. So just to do it once again, let's say I have written these macros and I want to share it with all of you. What will I do? I will open my Excel that has the macros in it. I will click on File, Save As, save it as an XLAM, and then I'm going to save it on my desktop. Okay. So this creates a special, just a second, just create a different name. Okay. So you notice it creates a new file called XLAM, and you see this image is different, the icon is different. This is my normal Excel file. In fact, I'll place all the three so that you can compare them. See this. This is your regular Excel. This exclamation mark means that it's an Excel file that has a macro in it. So it's a macro enabled workbook. And this one, the one that looks like a grid, is not a normal file. That means that if you double click on it, you notice when you double click on it, just a second. Okay. Again, no Excels are open right now. When you double click on this, nothing happens. This is very important. When you have an XLAM file, it will not work like a regular Excel file, right? So don't get confused thinking, oh, should I save all my Excel files as an XLAM? Absolutely not. You should only save your Excel files in XLAM in case you want to distribute it with other people. So what do I do now? I can just attach this on an email. I send it to all of you, right? Now the question is, you have this file. Now where do you put this file on your computer? Because you don't know what the path is, right? So to find out the path, what you can do is just open any blank Excel file. You click on File, and then you click on Save As. Watch carefully. I will save it as an XLAM, and this way you will get to know that this is the directory that you want. Okay? So this is the directory that you want. So what can you do now? You can just come to your desktop, copy this file, come here and paste it. Okay? So I hope this is clear. You save it as an XLAM on your computer. You can send it to 500 other people, but you also have to tell the other 500 people how to use it. So you tell them that you open a blank Excel, you go to add-ins folder and just copy and paste the XLAM file inside it. And that way, they can also now start using the macros that you have created. Right? So this was the boring topic that I wanted to cover in terms of how do you share your macros with other people. So if you have any questions, you can ask me, and then we'll come to how to create a pivot table. So any questions, anyone? You saved as an XLAM. The folder is designated. Then you send the file as an attachment to other users. I'm just writing this in the chat window. And other users also have to save the file in that same folder, right? So that is the step. You save it as an XLAM in a specific folder. If you want to send it to others, you copy the file, put it as an attachment, send it to other people, but they will also have to save it in that same folder, okay? There is another way of sending macros to other people. Both are different approaches. I will let you decide which one you want to do. The advantage of sending an XLAM is that all the modules go together, okay? But if you just want to send one module, what you can do is Let's say I have a module called module 1. I can just right click and I can click on export file. Please remember, this will only export the current module, not all the modules. So if you notice, when I export the file and I'm just going to save it on my system, it saves it in a BAS format, which is a basic file format, which looks like this, right? Now, how do you send it to other people? Very simple. You just send it as an attachment. Now, how will they import it to their Excel file? They will open Excel, they will go to VBA, and then they will right click and say import file. Right? So I hope that process is clear. It's very simple. If you only want to send one module at a time, you can export and then the other person can import the module. If you want to send all the modules at the same time, then you have to send it like an XLAM file. All right, so we come to our final example for the third day of our session. Let's come to how to create pivot tables. So what I'll do is, I first want to get some data with me, right? Where I can copy and, just a second, let me just copy and paste the Superstore data first. I'm not taking a very large data set. I'm taking about 3,000 rows, but large enough for you to get an idea of what is happening, right? So this is my data. Okay. Now, a lot of you must be thinking that, why can't we just record a pivot table? But it's not that simple. And I'll tell you the exact reasons why. Think about it. And watch this carefully, okay? When I make a pivot, I create it in a new sheet. What is a sheet name? It is sheet 2, obviously. So you notice it becomes sheet 2. Now, the problem with Excel is that if you delete sheet number 2, and if you again create a pivot, it will not create sheet number 2, it will create sheet number 3. Why? Because once you have created a sheet on Excel, you can't use the same name again, which means that you have to manually change it. But Excel will remember that you had already used a sheet called sheet number 2. Now, do you see the problem with recording? When you record, you would have recorded that I created a pivot in sheet number 2. But when you're repeating the recording, how can you create another pivot in the same sheet? Or what if the sheet does not exist? That is the reason why pivots cannot be recorded, right? They just can't. I mean, you just have to take my word for it. Pivots cannot be recorded at all. But then what do? Because it's a large piece of code. No? Very simple. You say VBA pivot table. And then there are a lot of links available here. So if you go to spreadsheetguru.com, right, they have given this complete example to you how to create a pivot table, right? So I'll just copy this entire thing. I will come to my VBA window and we simply insert a module and then we paste it. So as you can see, this has been beautifully commented, but let's try to see what all is happening. Okay, the first thing, I'm declaring SH3 as a worksheet. I'm declaring PVT cache as pivot cache. So why is this a cache? Because remember, whenever you create a pivot on Excel, the process is that you have a table and you want to create a pivot, but it never goes from a pivot, goes to pivot from a table directly. It always creates a pivot cache in the middle. So you might be wondering, what is this and why do we do this? Let me explain it to you in this manner. Watch this. I created a pivot table, all right? I'm coming to my original sheet and I'm deleting it right in front of you. Now you might be wondering, how is that possible? How can you delete the source data? And how is my pivot still working? As you can see, I can still put state in rows, I can still put sales in value. Now the reason for this is that Excel never creates a pivot table directly. What it does is it always creates a copy of that table, which is called a pivot cache, and then it creates a pivot table using that pivot cache. Now, like it or hate it, unfortunately, this is how it works, but this is why I wanted to delete the original sheet to prove to you that even if you delete the original sheet, the pivot will still work. Why? Because it is not referring to the original table at all. It is always referring to the pivot cache. Okay? So what I'll do is I just quickly get all my data back. Okay. So we are creating a pivot cache. Now you know why that is important. What is PVT? PVT is the pivot table that you want to create. What is start PVT? Think about it. Start PVT is nothing but the sheet name in which you're creating. Do you see this? Start pivot is sheet name and the range. That means the cell at which the pivot will start to appear. And then I'm creating SRC data, which is my source data. So what is the first thing we do? We take our source data, which is this. So I say source.data, active sheet.name, which is sheet 5. Then I add an exclamation mark. So I hope this is clear why we do this. The exclamation mark is always used as a reference, right? For example, if I want to write equal to and I select A1 from the other sheet, you notice it comes like this. It comes as sheet name, exclamation mark, and the cell. So this is the syntax that we follow. And this is the reason why I need to put an exclamation mark here as well. So what am I selecting? I'm selecting sheet number 5, exclamation mark, A1 to R100. Now you might be wondering, but oh, this is A1 to R100. What if my data is not always A1 to R100? So I'm going to teach you, when we update this code to show you how we can choose a data set which can range from any column to any row. All right. Okay. And remember, for this, we're going to use LRow and LCOM that we did yesterday. Then we add a sheet. So I say that sheets.add means I'm adding a sheet. And what is the name that I'm giving to that new sheet? I'm calling it SHT. Remember, this is just a name. I can call this anything I want. Okay, now watch. Now it says, where do you want the pivot table to start? Which means that so far, what have I done? I've selected my entire data. I have added a new sheet. Okay. This sheet has been named as SHT. And now I want to create a pivot in the cell A3. This is what I've defined here. If you notice, the sheet name and A3 is my cell address. Okay. After that, remember, I told you that you can't create a pivot directly from the data. So you create a pivot cache. And I have told you that this underscore means that I'm breaking a code into multiple lines. So we don't need to do that. We can just put everything in one line. If you notice, I can just put everything in one line. It's not really that complicated. We are saying, what is my pivot cache? My active workbook pivot caches dot create, right? From where? From my source data. So think of it this way. Your source data was your active sheet name and the cell, which was this entire thing, right? From this, what did you do? You use the source data to create a database. And what is the database type? It is a pivot cache. Now remember, you don't need to remember all of this. You don't need to type it. This code is already available. I'm just telling you how to understand it. After that, how do you create a pivot table? Now you say, because my cache is already there, it says set PVT. Okay. What is PVT here? PVT is the pivot that I'm creating, which is nothing but my pivot cache, and I'm creating a pivot table. Where is it starting? It is starting on the cell A3. And what is the name I'm giving? I'm giving it a name called pivot table 1. So let's see how this works. For now, I'm going to make it manual. So I'm going to say that my cells are from A1 till J3320, but I'll also show you how do you make this dynamic. So we'll make this from A1 till J3320. Okay, let's see how this works. So we click on developer, we click on macros, and then we say create pivot table and then run. So if you notice, what has happened here is it has automatically created a pivot table. And if you notice, the entire pivot has come in, right? And what is the name of the pivot table? The name of the pivot table is pivot table 1. Now, of course, you could have changed this in the code as well, right? This is just the beginning, okay? This is just creating a pivot. Now, when you want to automatically put different elements, something in row and something in column, that is a different part of a code. But I first want you to make sure that if you have any questions regarding this. Anyone? I just open the code window. Again, it's not very complicated because it's already available on the internet. But guys, please remember, you have to understand how it works, not memorize it, because whenever you want to make some changes here and there, if you don't bother to understand it, you will never be able to make any changes. Guys, any questions? Abhinav, anything you would like to ask? All good? All right. So let's continue. This is how to create a pivot table. We'll go back to the website and we need to add my pivot fields. Okay. So for now, I'm just going to copy this entire thing. And let me just put this in the at the top so that we can understand what is PVT. It's a type of pivot table. What is the which pivot table are we working on? We're working on pivot table 1. Obviously, this is a name that you can put manually, or you can ask the user to select it from an input box. So think what we are doing. Everything has been commented beautifully. What is report filter? It is here. So if you notice, in my report filter, we don't have here, so I'm going to select my order date. Okay. Or let me say something else. Let me put my region, right? So I'm going to put my region. This is how you can modify these things. You can say region is my report filter. Okay, then it says what is the column label. So my column label should be, let's say, the segment. So I'm keeping segment here. And then what should be the row label? My row label can be the, let's say the order date. Okay, so order date. Then it says position item in list. So here position one, I don't think we need it right now. So I can just comment it for now. And then we say, what is the number format of that field? So we want to say that position of item in list. Let me just think what they're doing. So what they're doing is they're putting here in the report filter. Okay, so this would mean that, okay, so I don't think we need this as well. Okay, let's see if it works or not, right? I think it should work. Let's see. So we select developer macros and we say adding pivot table fields. So I click on run and you notice it has automatically created a data set for me. Very cool, right? Region has come in filter, order date has come in rows, and segment has come in columns. Now there are no values inside because we haven't put anything right now. So let's just come to the code and see where we put that. So this would be position item in list format pivot table field. Mhm. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we have to add calculated pivot table fields, and we also can add a value field. Okay, so value field is a different code. Let's do that also. I can just copy this entire thing, come back, put it at the top, and then very simple. It says PF is my value field. I'll just call this not salaries. I'll call this, let's say, sales, and then the name is sum of sales. Remember, you can also change this name to anything you want. So I can call this total sales, and this should again be sales, and we want to find the Excel sum, right? Remember, you can do different types. You can do Excel average, sum, count. So for now, I want to find the sum. Let's see how this works. So I click on developer macros and then I run my macro, which is add values field, and I click on run, and I notice my values get added. So let's try to do all of this in one go now. We will delete it. We will delete everything else except my one sheet. Okay. Now remember, I told you can run different macros one by one by using a call function. So I can just say sub all codes. Right. So what is the first code I want to run? Which is creating a pivot, which is create pivot table. So I say call create pivot table. After that, we want to call adding pivot table fields, and after that, I want to call add values field. So let's see how this works now. Now we just have to click on one macro, which is all codes, and in one click, you notice it does everything on its own. It creates a pivot, creates a pivot cache, creates a pivot table, gives it the name you want, and then it goes forward and puts all the elements in the right places. How simple is it to create? Just pay attention and watch this. Now, right now, if I ask you that, can you change all of these sum values to count? How will you do this? You'll have to right click and then click on summarize values and then change it to a count. But if I want to do this using a pivot, what I can do is I can just say sub change the type, right? Okay, and we should be able to change this to count, Excel count, and okay. I think when we add it will add one more. It will not replace the current one, but let's check once. So I say change type, and I click on run, and it doesn't work. Hold on. Oh, I'm so sorry. I have a end sub that came accidentally. So macros and change type, and then run, and it doesn't work. Hold on. What could it be? Let's try once again. Macros, and then we say change type. Okay, so this means that I can't, so this is a learning for us, right? This means that we have to remove the older one and then we have to add the new one. Now, might be wondering, oh my God, how will we remove the old one? How do you do this? Very simple. You can just record a macro. Either you can search online or you can record. I just call this test. I will just move my total sales outside so that I delete it. I will stop my recording. Let's see what has been recorded now. So we get this small recording saying this, which is what? Which is removing the older one. So what I can do is I can just come here and say that first you remove the older one and then you apply the new one. Let's see how this works now. So imagine we had our sales, which was my sum. If you want to change it to count, very simple. You can just create a button now. Assign macro, change type. And then whenever the user wants to change, you can just click. I'm so sorry, just a second. Wait. It should be sum of sales. All right. So I click and you notice I can seamlessly move between different levels. Now you might be wondering, but what is the big deal? Why can't I simply right click and change this to sum and count? A number of reasons. Number one, by doing it in a macro, you're able to automate it. Number two, by doing it in a macro, you can even change a pivot table on a different sheet. Otherwise, you will have to manually go to that sheet and then change it. And number three, if you want to make this change in multiple pivots at the same time, now you can just copy and paste that code for different sheets. You don't have to go to every sheet one by one and then make this change. And number four, if you want to create a very nice user experience, you can just create an add-in like a user form, not an add-in, a user form. And in the user form, you can give multiple choices to the user and the user can decide what they want to see. Okay. So any questions, anyone? So I hope you're able to see how we can copy bits of codes from the internet and see the key learning of a good developer is how to find the good websites, right? I mean, just see how beautiful this website is, right? And it's unbelievable, the sort of details they have given you. I mean, even something to the extent of how to format a pivot table, they have explained that as well, right? For example, if you want to change from count to sum, right? So this will allow you to toggle between the count and sum, right? I will not explain it to you right now because now you know the basic idea. You can always go back and check this. Right? But that's how it works. And of course, he has explained everything in detail.
Avish, how far is it practically used in the corporates and all? Because as far as I understand from my experience, most of the times when you present data to different people across board, so what you do is you usually customize n kind of pivot tables to n categories and assign values differently. So every time I am like going to search a code and then copy paste it and then use my brain enough and then again toggle things. So don't you think is it not that efficient? I mean, if I have to just present one or two or three pivot tables, three different kind of pivot tables, I can just simply click on the usual way and do present the things.
Yeah, tell you what. we are only creating a pivot. But when you say I want to do some custom changes to a pivot, for example, I wanted to create a pivot in which, or maybe I wanted to create 7 pivot tables. And in the pivot table, I wanted to group it. Just to give you an example, I'll
Yeah.
put my sales in rows and I'm going to right click and then group it together. Now, you're going to do this every single time, right? See, it's just a time saver. At the end of the day, if you say my role doesn't require me to create a pivot all the time, then probably it doesn't help you. I'll give you an example, like something we did for a client, maybe that will help you see what is the sort of advantage we get. So this would be Starlight and then Kamal.
So what you mean to suggest is that for once I can create a macro code and then I can use it as and when I require to create a pivot table across my datas, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just a one-time time investment that I need to do.
Like, just to give an example, guys. So look at this. Even though you don't understand the context of the data, when you look at it, you know what I've done, right? I have my headcount data. I have created a filter where I can choose the month that I want. So if I say July 2018, it gives me the data for 80. My charts change. This is one pivot. This is another pivot. I have all automatically made these tenure groups. And I've also made it this beautifully formatted pivot. And you know the best part? Let me remove all this. Just watch this. I'm deleting it. All of this was coming from this MIS report. So how it used to work was that this was created on Workday. On the 28th or 29th of every month, the HR business partner would get a report like this, which has details of all the active and the probationary and the employees that have left. And that person was expected to create all these pivots because you have to show these cuts to the management. And he needed to take 2 days to prepare. Why? Because if you notice, if I look at my joining date, how do you know whose joining date or whose experience is between 3 to 5 years and 5 to 10 years? You will have to calculate that every single time. So what would they do? They would create a new column. He would write,
and then they'll filter out
your frac. You will have to filter it out.
Yeah.
What was my solution? I said, I've already created all the pivots for you. You just click on one button, just see how it works, okay? I click on one button and it automatically creates my entire dashboard for me. A 2-day task has now got reduced to 5 minutes because you don't have to do anything. You just copy your new data in this MIS sheet and you just click on that button. You tell me how much time would you have taken to create? I'm not saying you couldn't have done it manually. All I'm saying is it would have taken you a lot of time to do
Probably
this.
I would have taken more than 2 days.
Look at these formulas. Like, all my formulas are now written in the code. See, a lot of time people say, but Habish, in the code also we have to write the formula. I agree that in the code as well you have to write the formula. But the benefit is that when you write the formula in an Excel file, you have to copy and paste the formula every time you have to use it. If you do it in a macro, you just have to do it one single time and you don't have to make any changes there. So even if you see my code, you will notice this is how I created my code and all my formulas are here. Do you see this? These are all my different formulas that I've created. Now, it is so much more advisable to do this on a VBA code because this is just a one-time job for me. I can just run it and automate it whenever I want. Right? And this is very similar to what we did. This is creating the pivot. Right? And if you notice, even my charts are coming automatically. So these charts that you see, they were also created automatically. So, you know, the colors and the boxes, this is not a default Excel chart, right? So if you notice, when I make a normal chart, just to show you, if I select this data and I press Alt F1, this is my normal chart. Look how boring this is. And look how mine looks. And this chart has also been created using this. I mean, this is going to be the next example where I show you how to create charts using Visual Basic. Again, I mean, if you guys don't really have a need, then I don't really know what to say. But I wanted to show you this example to prove to you that this is very important. I mean, PwC and EY cannot survive without Visual Basic because they have such repetitive tasks. For them, it is mandatory. I mean, if they start doing it manually and copying pasting, they will never be able to complete their work. Right?
Are the guys there using similar kind of functionalities?
Nobody knows how to write macros there. Yeah. So a couple of things happen there. One is that they already have their own add-in that has been created. Like I showed you one, which was Havisham Consulting.
Yeah.
Like that, they have their own add-ins, which are macros that their global team has already deployed. The other is that they will always have people in the company who are creating these macros and then sharing it with the others. Right? So like the partner would call up a person and say, you know, write a macro, I need my 150 people to automate their processes, and the IT guy will create something. Even though users are only using the macro, they don't really know how to write it or how to modify it because their tasks are so repetitive. There is very little deviation in the way the macro works. And they have macros for the smallest of things. Let me just give you a small example, just so that you understand how it is used in the corporate. So all this you will not find on the internet. Let me just show it. Like this is how they've created their Excel add-ins. So if you notice, these are all the different commands that they've created. So these are specific commands that Excel doesn't offer, but they've created these functionalities. So if you notice, if you want to create a Marimekko chart on Excel, you can't do this. It will take you 5 days and you will still not be able to create something like this. But they have created an inbuilt macro that can create a Marimekko chart. Similarly, if you want to create a waterfall or a bridge chart, right, you can just, even though waterfall now has been added, so like this, if you notice, they've added a button called tools, and then they've given different options. So if you notice, when I say ABCD and I select 3 ranges, it automatically gives me a combined list like this. If you want to extract the unique values. Similarly, if you want to look at other add-ins that they create, this is the one for PowerPoint. So they have created this. So they created this add-in called Smart, and then they have all these different functionalities that they have put. So these alignment functions, they have the ability to automatically format a PowerPoint, how to copy it directly from an Excel file like this. And see small things like, for example, look at this one. Decrease and increase indent level, or for that matter, even something like this, fix the width. If you want to make 2 shapes the same width, people say, but I can do it manually, but you don't want to spend all the time doing it, right? And that's the advantage.
So that is why these guys make standard presentations across, because they have
because their brand guidelines are extremely stringent. I mean, they if they say 11.5 is the font size, they have to use 11.5. If they say it has to be green with a CMYK value of a certain number, they have to use that number. They're not allowed to experiment. Like they can't even use an icon from the internet, even the free
ones.
It
is very relatable because I've worked with 3 big consultants. I mean, with my previous employer and current employer. But there's A.T. Kearney, which is not that much flamboyant in terms of presentation. It's more of an operations thing. But PwC, I'm currently working with, and then Accenture also. So all that happens across board. So they use standard templates, and now I'm clear why they are so much.
One is why, and the other is how. So the how is also important.
Yeah. So I just came to know the how part right now.
Yeah. Right.
Anyways, thank you so much.
Yeah. Right. So see, I'm not going to save this example. I mean, I save it just in case you want to have a look at it, even though the website is already there, and you can have a look at that. So just call this session PPR 13. Oh, it's May, right? So it's May 1st. And macro enable workbook. Oh, we had to do one more thing. So I also want to show you how we can create charts and automate that process. Just a second. All right. So we'll take a small data set so that they can understand this. We will say region, and this is sales. We have north, south, west, east. We have 10, 20, 30, and 50. So watch this. We want to record a macro, 2 macros in fact. So record macro. I will select my data, and then we press, we can just insert a normal chart. So insert charts, and I will select a normal column chart. Okay. And then I will click outside. I will select my chart and I will delete it. Okay. Watch carefully. I will again select the data and then click on insert and then select a pie chart. Right. Like this. And the same thing, I click on it and I delete it. Let's stop the recording and let's see the code now. So this says, okay. So we selected B2 to C6. We created active sheet. On my active sheet, I created a shape. So remember, charts are considered to be a child within the parent shapes in Excel. I know it's very odd. You would wonder how can a chart be a shape? That's how it is considered. So it's dot shapes dot add chart, and then you have 201. So if you notice, this is add chart to 251. This is 201. That is nothing but the code of the chart that you're creating. So this is an Excel column cluster. This is an Excel pie, right? And then once that is selected, what do? This is the source that you're giving to that chart. So remember, in the first one, I'm defining the type of the chart. So this is the type. And after that, you have the source. I know it seems that it is the other way around. You would say, should it not be the source and then the type? No, it is always first the type of the chart that you want, and then the source that you want to put inside that. So if you notice this part, my source and my source, these are exactly the same, right? Nothing changes. My range is also the same, only my type of chart is changing here. Okay, but I want you to notice this. This is very, very important. Do you see chart 1 and this says chart 2? So what happens is that when you create a chart and you delete it and you create a new one, the new chart name will not be chart 1, it will become chart 2. Like I showed you with sheets, every time you create a sheet and delete it, it keeps on following that number. Now this is a problem because if you record the macro, what will happen? You recorded that I should create a chart called chart 1. But when you delete it, you're not deleting chart 1, right? You're deleting the first chart that you have. So how do I do this? Just to show you how it works. I'm going to cut it and then put it on a different code. So I'll call this sub pie. So this is my pie chart and let's call this my column chart. And obviously the deletion should happen as the first one, right? So before creating a new one, we have to delete whatever is there currently. So we want to make sure that we are deleting it as the first command. And then I can run a simple code saying sub. By now we are comfortable with this. We say sub, choose the chart type. So we tell the user that you decide your chart type. So the chart type would be equal to input box, and it says please choose chart type, right? Then I say if the CHT type is equal to C, because C is column here, then I want to call my function column, else I want to call my function pie, because in this case we only had two cases, right? So we make this end. So it makes sense, right? Input box will open, the user will choose a letter. He will say either C or P. If he chooses C, then it calls this function, so it creates a column chart. Otherwise, it calls the pie chart. The problem is, of course, there'll be an error. So if you notice, when I create a shape and I say assign macro and choose chart type, you notice when I click, it says input box, I say C, but when I click on OK, there's a problem. Now the problem is coming because you told it, watch carefully. In fact, this should also be in a double quote, but that's okay. So you told it to delete a chart called chart number 2. The problem is there is no chart on my sheet currently. So how is it supposed to delete anything? So everybody, I hope this makes sense. See, if there was already a chart on my sheet called chart number 2, just to show it to you, let's say there was already a chart and this chart was called, I'm not even sure if you can change the name like this, but okay, let's do it like this. If I try to delete this, see what happens. Now this time we have a chart. When I click on this and I say, see, I want a column chart, and I press OK, it says there is an error. The error is because we're trying to delete a chart called chart number 1. The problem is the chart that is there on my sheet is not chart number 1. And how do I prove that to you? If I simply record a macro and I call this test, see what will happen. If I select this and I just move it, do you see my chart is called chart number 4 now? Why? Because every time you delete and insert and delete a chart, the chart number keeps on increasing. But we are stuck, right? Because how do you know what is the chart name that has been given? Now, we don't know the chart name, but we do know that this is the first chart on my sheet. So rather than writing the name, I will just put 1. Okay, this means, remember, this is not in double quote. 1 means that this is referring to the first chart that is there on my sheet. Similarly, this will also becomes chart number 1. This is the index number. So if you notice, when I say chart objects, if I want to write the name, I can write a name like this. But if I want to write the index, I can just write chart number 1. Let's see how this works. Let me first make this into a different type. Otherwise, we won't know that something happened. So I click, I say C, and I press OK. And if you notice, it creates a column chart for me. Very cool, right? I'll tell you how to make the size different and how to put it in a certain location. But it is giving us a result. Similarly, when I click and I say P for pi, you notice it deletes the first one and it creates a pie chart. But there's a problem, no? If there was no chart on the sheet and I click and I say C, this will again result in an error because now it says that Havish, you're asking me to delete the first chart on the sheet, but there is nothing on the sheet. So what am I supposed to delete? So now we want to use an error handler. So we call this an error handler. And what are we doing? So this says what to do if there is no chart on the sheet. So what do I want to do? I want to ignore this part and continue with the rest of my code. Otherwise, what happens? Because VBA works line by line, right? That's how the execution happens. If it stops on this line, it doesn't continue with the rest of the lines because it says, I don't know what to do. I can't proceed. What we want is we want to tell the code that, see, if you find an error, don't stop, continue with the rest of the code. So how do we do this? We call this on error resume next, right? This is simply called on error resume next. That's all, which means if you find an error, don't stop, continue with the rest of the code. This means that this will result in an error, but the code will not stop. The code will continue creating my chart for me. Just see how this works. Now I have nothing on my sheet right now. I will click. It says, please choose the chart type. I say C. Now, even though it was not able to delete C, when I press OK, it still creates a chart for me, right? So that is how you can record a macro and you can put an if statement, and then you could also do some little bit of error handling. But remember, simply recording would not have got you the result because converting that actual name into an index number is a must. Otherwise, it will never work, right? Okay. Now the problem is that the chart is coming, which is great, but it doesn't come in the area I want. No, it is just coming in some area. I want the chart to be of a certain size, and I want the chart to come exactly in these cells. If you notice, something like this.
Avish, I have a small question before you proceed. Can I ask the same? So we are discussing how to make a macro of the chart. So say for example, I have a data and I have made a macro of one chart, and I want to emulate that same macro into the other data of mine. Okay. Right? So like for example, here you have shown, say for example, 4 rows of data sets. Now I have a macro that is prepared for, say for example, 10 rows of data sets, and I want to replicate the same chart in 20 or 30 rows of data sets. Right. So I'll have to go back to that code and edit all the fields.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Remember, so good that you asked this. It will also be a recap of what we did yesterday, but this is an important topic, so I do want to cover it. Now, right now, what is happening is that your range that you have selected is B2:C6. Makes sense, right? Yeah. Now, what we need to do is we need to be able to assign the source automatically. So just think about how we'll do this. So what we need to do is, of course, the user will select the data before creating the chart. Even if there were 10, you would have selected it, no? Otherwise, how would you create it?
Yes.
So I need to somehow find out what is my selected area. So what is the user selected? So a continuation of what we did yesterday. I will say VBA selected range. And if you notice, it says, okay, look at this part. It says my string is equal to selection dot address. Okay. So I just copy this and I put it in a new module so that there's no confusion. Insert and then module. And I just call this sub dynamic chart. Okay. So it says my string is equal to selection address. So I just say message box my string. Let's see if it works. Okay. So I will select my data. I click on my code called dynamic chart, and it tells me my string is $B, $2, $C, $6. Make sense? Now, where does this $2, $B, $2, $C, $6 need to go? I hope you're able to see. Now, when I go back to my previous code, it will actually go in. See this part? Right? Now, this in our code was static, but we need to make it dynamic. How do you make it dynamic now? Very simple. You will simply say, I just make a copy so that there's no confusion in case you want to go back and practice. I will stop after my exclamation mark and then put a double quote. I will concatenate. Now we don't need to type all of this. We just need to put my my name. So I'll just call this my range, right? Like this, okay? Now see how it works. What is my range? My range is equal to Control C. I'll come back, and then before making the chart, obviously I need to select my range. So this is the chart source, which is my range is equal to selection dot address. Fair enough?
Okay.
And we don't need this, so we can remove this. And I think it should work now. Let's see. So let me remove everything. My code is called column, right? So we'll run column. So if I say run column, it creates a chart. Let's see if it works if my data set is larger. So I just copy and paste this and I put it one more time. I can select my data, run my code called column, and it still works.
Okay.
Like this. Right? See, so whenever you write a code, everyone, this is a very standard process. So if you're thinking, oh my God, was my question very peculiar? It wasn't. This is literally what we do all the time as developers. You record a code or you copy a code from the internet. But the problem is that somebody who wrote the code on the internet might have written B2C6 because in his example, it was B2C6. Also in our recording, it was B2C6. Now in a recording, I can't record something like this. No, that is the part where you have to make it dynamic. So you have to let the user decide what is the source of that chart, like this.
Fair. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions, anybody? So I hope you're able to see how we're able to refactor the code and slowly we keep on improving it. So I know it's a slightly long session, but I'll just complete this example. So I want to say VBA chart aligned to cell. So do you see this? It says active sheet.shapes, your chart, that is the chart name that we have, which will be .1, .left is equal to sheet1 cells .left. So I hope it makes sense. This means that you're assigning it to particular cells in your worksheet. So I'm just going to copy this. Control C, come back, and then put it at the top so that you can understand this. This is sub chart location. And since we're doing it, I will also make this change for the pie chart so that everything is uniform. So my error handler, Control C. And then we don't need this bit. And we can just copy this one, Control C, and then Control V. Okay. And I think everything is okay now. Okay, so what is my chart location? We can just go back to the website, copy this, paste it here, and we can say that my chart is not called chart, your chart, it's the number one chart because there's only one chart on my sheet. Okay, and we say it should be, what is my sheet called? It's called sheet one, so we don't need to change that. Let's say we want to put it in J2, right? So I say cell. So J would be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So this is my 10th column and my second row. So my second row and my 10th column, my second row and my 10th column. And the height, I'm not sure what this is. Let's see. So probably this would be J2 to M2. Let's give it a shot. So J2 to M2, and this can become, let's say J10 to, no. J2 to J10, and then this is J2 to M2.
I guess the height would be the number of rows.
Yeah, so that's what it is. So yeah, exactly. So 2 to 10, and the width is JKLM. So 5 columns, right? And then let's see if it works. So first I'll create a chart. So C, create a chart for me. There's something wrong. Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not select the cells, no. So select my cells, create a column chart. And if we now run my code called chart location, it doesn't work because that is the first shape. So the problem is that I hope everybody is able to see what happened because we said change the first shape. The problem is the first shape on my sheet is actually the circle, right? So I will probably have to change this to 2. Let's give it a shot. Otherwise, we'll figure something else out. So let's run my chart location and see what happens. Right? Now, this again can be controlled by the user. Imagine how useful this can be. Like wherever you're saying this, if you notice, this says the width is J2 to M2. If you were really smart, what we could have done is we could have kept this dynamic, right? So basically, I could have kept a range in which I could have said, just watch this. So let me just copy this. And I say sheet 1 dot range cells J2. So J will be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So this will be 9, 2,9. I hope I'm doing this correctly. Let's check once. And this will be my cells, which is KLM. So that would be, that's a 13. So 2,13. ठीक लग रहा है, and this is with okay, let's see if it works or not. But if it works, we can do something really cool. Now, again, I'm just manually making the size a little more. So when I run my code called chart location, and I press run, do you see what happened? Now I used a manual number, which was defining the column and the starting column and the end column, which means that I could have kept input box and I could have said my width, and just watch this carefully, my width is equal to, let's say, a certain number of cells. So I will say input box and choose width, right? I'm just doing this in a hurry. And if the user chooses a number, let's say 5, what will happen? This is already 9, okay? Because I always am starting on 9. So I can say that my start cell is equal to 9 and my end cell is equal to my start cell plus my width. So if you notice carefully, what we have managed to do is we have copied a code from the internet. We have made it a little more dynamic. So what happens? The user decides the width, that is a number. Let's say he chooses 5 or 10 or 2. The starting cell is 9. What is 9? 9 is nothing but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if you notice, this is the corner in which the cell will start. Now, how wide will the chart be? This is 5 because I'm choosing 5. So that number can be chosen by the user now. So if you notice, when I again want to change the chart size, I can switch to chart location. And 1 second. Maybe I should not be using width. I should be using my width, because width might be an internal name, no? That's why it's always advisable to use something unique. I think it should work now. So chart location. Okay, one last time. I say choose the width. I say 7, and then if you notice the chart size doesn't increase. Okay, hold on. Okay, let me. This should be width itself. See what the problem can be. Seems okay. So sheet 1 range. Let's see. So we select our data, we create a chart, and then if we run our code, let's see, chart location, choose file, and it's working. Okay. Why was it working earlier? I'm not sure. Let's see. So if we run it once again, chart location, and I say 10, oh yeah, it's working, right? So chart location, if I want to change the width. So do you see how nice this is? I've actually made it dynamic. And of course, I hope you're able to see, you can make the height dynamic as well. Again, imagine how useful it is. When you have a report in which this is what happens with financial reports, like you have 30 different charts that you have created, and you want to suddenly go and somebody will tell you, make everything the same size because we have to send it to the client. You're like, oh my God, will I have to go to every single chart and change the size? No, you can just use a very nice code like this. Okay. Similarly, I could have done it with the height as well. So where this J2 and J10 is written, I could have written the height as well. See, that's what I'm saying. When you read more, you get to know what all you can search online. Like if you say VBA change chart size, you will already find this code readily available. Like, look at this. Do you see this? With my active chart, you can just say dot height is equal to 3. So this is in pixels, right? I'm not defining it as per cells. I can actually choose the height in pixels, which is even better, right? But if you want to line it up covering a range, then you can just write the active sheet dot range like this. I want to show you something. Look at this code. I'm not sure if this is the one I had in mind, but just see this. If I remember correctly, something like this will work when you have a lot of charts. I'm just creating let's say 3 charts. Okay. And if this works correctly, line up my charts. How it should work is you will run the macro, line up my charts, and in one click, see what it does. Very cool, right? So I hope everybody was able to see what it did. Let's say you have multiple charts on a sheet. You have created a dashboard. And the problem is that it's very irritating because you will have to go one by one, and you'll have to, of course, align all of it. The size and all will have to be changed. What do? Simple code. I did not even make any changes to it. You say line up my charts, click on run. In one click, all the size becomes equal and they get aligned properly. How much better can it get? Okay. So not a very difficult code. If you notice, we don't need to read all of it, just some broad idea of how it works. We are, of course, defining my current width and my height, obviously. Single, remember, is just a data type, which is a number. Then my num height, and then I'm using my, I don't know what ICHT, CT, and IX is. Probably that's the axis that we're choosing. So my height and width I'm defining, which is 200 and 150. The num height is the number of charts I want in one row. And then I'm running a loop saying from my first chart to all the charts. So what is ICHT, CT? It is a count of all the charts on my worksheet. Like if you remember, I showed you to unhide all the worksheets, we say active workbook worksheets count. Similarly, I've said active sheets or chart objects count. And then that's it. I'm running a loop, and in every loop, anyway, this is not needed, but the idea is I'm taking the width of my screen and I'm making sure that all of them come one after the other. So that's how these beautiful codes can be found on the internet, as long as you know where to search for them and how to copy and paste them. And this is not one website. I mean, even in the 3 days that you've been with me, you must have seen I've gone to so many different websites, right? Like the absolute best website to get something is Stack Overflow. This is the most popular developer community in the world. And if you just search for VBA, right, you can just search for, I mean, this is even a good practice. If you want to learn, just go through these questions and see what type of questions people ask. So I can just say, what is my, so how to use regular expressions, how to use select statements, how to crack the password on an Excel sheet. So I don't know if you know this, but if somebody has put a password on a sheet, you can crack it using VBA, okay? So it's an excellent way of learning different things, because if other people in the world are asking these questions, then obviously it must be something important, right? But the website can get a little difficult to understand. So if you notice, the questions are simple, but the answers sometimes can become very complicated because people, in their attempt to help you, start to put so many different things. Okay? Excellent. So we actually had a longer session than planned. So let's quickly take a 10-minute break. Quick recap of what all we did. The first thing I showed you was that you can save a macro in an XLAM file. If you want to export a single module, you can just right-click and export. Right-click and export. If you want to export all the modules, then you save it as an XLAM that you can send to other people. Where do you save the XLAM file? In a specific folder. Then I showed you that you can make a pivot table, but the process is table goes into cache, cache makes a pivot. And then this is how we added values, and we added pivot fields as well. Of course, this can be changed yourself. All of this is readily available online. After that, I showed you can record the creation of a chart, but the chart name is not always the same. It keeps on going in a sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means you have to use a chart number. So if you notice, this is chart object 1, which means the first chart. Then I created a simple if statement between a pi and a column. And then I also showed you how you can define the chart location in a particular area. And you can also make the width dynamic, right? Yeah, that's what we've done, right? So a short 10-minute break. We will start at, we can start at 6:55. And if you have any questions, you can put it on the chat window. And then I'll come back and answer. Okay. So see you in a bit. Can we start? Is everybody there? Okay. All right. So quick question, everyone. How do you find the compounded annual growth rate? So I'm just putting 5 years, and this is my amount. So let's say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this is let's say 100, 120, 115, 130, and then 140, something like this. How do you find the CAGR? Now, a lot of people don't know this, but there is a function called NRR. Oh, wait. Wait a second. There's a function called RRI, okay? There's a function called RRI that it says something else. It says it returns an equivalent interest rate for the growth of an investment, but this also calculates the CAGR for you. So NPR, PV, and FV. So my NPR is 5, my present value is 100, and my future value is 140. And if you notice, it gives us 7%. So I notice that there is a 7% CAGR. Now the problem is that one is that I don't know if all of you have this function or not. It might be a new function. Also, a lot of people are not comfortable using RRI to calculate the CAGR. So we need to understand what is the formula for calculating a CAGR. So if I just quickly Google it. So my CAGR on Excel okay, so my CAGR on Excel is this, right? This means it is my future value, which is B7, divided by my present value, which is B2. Then this is to the power, okay? The hat symbol refers to the power of 1 divided by A7, which is the number of years that you have, and then a -1, okay? So if I try to do the same thing here, we will say, I'll write the formula here, formula text, and then I can also write the formula in my own way where I can say this is equal to last value divided by first value to the power of 1 divided by the NPER, which is 5, and then -1. So if you notice, it gives us the exact same number, right? Now, in this case, you already had a function called RRI, which remember is meant for something else, but somehow it works. It gives you the result that you want for a CAGR. But what if you want to create your own function? I would love it if I could have written CAGR, and then put my starting value, end value, and my NPER. How do I do this? For this, we have to create a function. So I will click on Insert, click on Module, and I'll create a new function. Now, a routine starts with sum, a function will start with function. Now, the difference is that a function obviously needs to have a name, so I'll call this CAGR. But then a function is not like a macro. That means the function needs to take arguments from the user. So I'll have to say that my start so that is a data type. My start is a variant. I'll explain what a variant is. My end is a variant. And finally, my period is also a variant. Okay. See, whenever you get an error like this, it typically means that there is a term that is not allowed to be used. Like end cannot be a name that you give because end is already used by VBA for its own internal library, right? Okay, so what have we done here? We have said that the user will be choosing 3 inputs. For example, when we write equal to VLOOKUP value, table array, column index number, range lookup. These are arguments, right? Which you separate with a comma. This is exactly the same thing that I'm building in my function. That means my function will have 3 different arguments from the user. And then what do I say? Very simply, I can just copy the same function that we wrote. This one. Okay, what will it be? It will be the end date divided by my start date to the power of 1 divided by the period. Okay, now just remember this order: start date, end date, and then the period. Now, how can I write my function? We can now say equal to CAGR. So this now becomes a part of the Excel function. Start number is 100, 140, and my period is 5. And you notice we get the same answer. Abhikili, ISCO you forget because RRI is not supposed to be something you guys should be using. Look at the difference now. Earlier, the user had to remember this formula every time they have to use CAGR. Now I've created my own function and they can just use it as this function. Now imagine this. If the user says, no, increase the CAGR by 10%, you will have to come to this formula and then you'll have to put a parentheses. You'll have to go to the end and say into 1.1. Look how difficult it is, right? What do? I simply say This is my function into 1.1. Just see how simple it has become. Because now my CAGR function is a function. That means it can be used as a part of other functions also. If you notice, if I say, tell me the sum of, tell me the average of 0.08, which is 8%, and CAGR, where I'm saying C3, C7, B7. It now gives me the average, which is 7. Just a second. Which is 7.48%. So what have I done? I have used a function which is already there on Excel, and I've combined it with a function that I have created. These are called UDFs, which are user-defined functions. Right? And if you Google it, you'll find loads of examples. So it's called UDF, which is a user-defined function. Right? And I've given you the basic idea of how to use it. So, like, look at this one. What does it say? It is a function that will extract the numeric parts from an alphanumeric string. How does it work? I can simply copy this, paste it, and remember it's called getNumeric. And it's a beautiful function. What this means is that if you have some numbers in text mixed together like this, okay, just watch. Some numbers in text mixed together, and if you want to separate only the numbers, you can simply say equal to getNumeric, and it will separate the numbers for you. How cool is that? If you did not know this function, believe me, there would have been no other way for you to separate the numbers from a text when they are mixed together. Excel doesn't have that capability. Right? So any questions, anyone? So I hope this was clear. We did two. The first one was I showed you how to write your own function with your arguments. Like what is happening here? There is only one argument, cell ref. Why? Because I'm only using one argument here. If there were two arguments, then it would have been two arguments. Right? And the function is fairly simple to understand. You're finding the length, then you're running a loop, and then you're looking at every single character in that string to find out which one is a number and which one is a text value. Right? Okay, so I want to explain what these data types are. What is a string? What is a long? What is a variant? So there are different data types in VBA. Okay. And the difference between using different data types is that, of course, when you want a number, you will use a number. And let me just close my system 1 second. The difference is that depending on the type of data you're using, it will also have a performance impact on your code, right? Not just that the file size will become large. See, the file size doesn't really matter. It's just measured in bytes. The difference is that if you don't write a code efficiently, right? For example, let's say I wanted to use a number between 0 and 255. I know my number will never cross 255. Then why do I need to define it as an integer? Do you see? Because an integer can store a number between -32 to +32. Similarly, a single can store a number between this and this, and a double and a decimal. So a decimal requires the largest amount of space. That means 28 places to the right of the decimal. That is the length of the number that it can store. Now you would say, but why don't we always use a decimal? Is it not better? Because that way I will make sure that whatever is the type of data, I will be able to accommodate it. But that's not how it works. The problem is decimal also requires more space in a code. And this 14 bytes that you see can have a huge performance impact. That is the reason you should only choose the data type that you feel is required for your work. If you don't feel that you require more than 255 as a number, then don't choose a byte. And like this, you have different types. Finally, you have something very special called the variant, which means if you're not sure about the data type of your variable, right, then you can use the variant data type. Right. So the variant data type is considered to be the most powerful one But a variant data type is also the one that uses the maximum amount of space. But if you guys are not sure what to do, should it be a string or a number or something, just give it a variant and it will automatically always work. Because see, your codes are going to be very small in size. I am referring to codes that are 1000, 2000 lines long. That is where this starts to make an impact. For the sort of codes that we are writing, it doesn't really make a difference. Right? Then you have something called option explicit. What does it mean? Option explicit says that whenever you're running a VBA macro, let's say something like this. Okay, just watch this. I'm going to comment this. Now, if I write option explicit at the top, just 2 words, what happens is when I run my code called lineup charts, you will notice that the code does not work. It says that the variable is not defined. So what does an option explicit do? It forces you as a user to declare every type of variable. So you have to declare that my width is single. You have to declare that num_wide is long. You have to declare that ch3ix is a long. Now, why do you do this? You do this because otherwise what happens is we keep on giving different names. And did you see, like, even in the previous codes, like when I was giving different names, we sometimes forget what is the name we gave. Like this was PVT, this was PF. This way, you will make sure that you're declaring all the names at the top. How do you do this? You simply do this by putting an option explicit at the top, which forces you as a user. That means the code will not get executed until and unless you have declared all these variables. So you notice the moment I declare every single variable and then I run my code, it will work perfectly, right? So any questions, anybody? So we have done a function as well. And like this, you can search for, see, there is no one website where you will find these functions, unfortunately. You will have to Google and search a lot because there is just so much available on the internet. And I can't really tell you because I don't know what your requirements are, right? But typically you should be able to find a function that is 70, 80% of what you need. And the rest of it, you should be able to, slightly manipulate on your own. Any questions, anyone? Okay. All right. So the next thing I want to show you is we have done Exclam, we've done pivot table, we've done UDFs. So let me just share the learning path with you. So in terms of what all is there on VBA. So there's a book called Notes for Professionals. Okay, it's a free book. So I'll just copy this and let me quickly close my VB window. We don't need this as well. So you can just say Notes for Professionals, and there's a website called books.goalkicker.com, and this gives you free programming books for every language that you can think of, right? So I want to pick up the one that is for Visual Basic. Now do remember it's a fairly complicated book. So VBA. So this book has been created by that website that I showed you, Stack Overflow. Okay. So it's quite a large book, 202 pages, and so they start off by explaining how to enable the developer tab. This is a recap for us also. You click on File, Customize Ribbon, File Options, Customize Ribbon, and then enable the developer tab. This is how the Visual Basic window looks. Now, then you notice it becomes very complicated. Then suddenly they come to debugging. And you're like, oh my God, what just happened? Where did the simple topics go? But see, this is the idea. This is meant for programmers, right? That's why for them, the most important thing is not how to write a code, because they say most of what you need to write can be recorded, okay? The problem is, or it can be found on the internet. The problem is, how do you fix incorrect codes? That's why they start off by saying, how do you debug proper codes, right? Okay. So again, if you notice, let's look at a simple module. If I say hello world and I say message box hello world, how do you run it? By pressing F5 or clicking on the green arrow. Okay, then let's start about comments. How do you put a comment? You put an apostrophe. This also we have done. Okay. And then you have these REM comments. Now, this is something we haven't done. REM is very, very seldom used. So this is not really required. So you can just let this be. Then we focus on whatever you feel is not required, you can skip that part. Okay, I'll come to the part that is important for you. Because these are all small chapters. Like then they talk about how to declare variables, right? So they have said dim is how you declare a variable, right? And then they have said if you say some integer percent, you're declaring something as an integer. So it's the same thing. You could have said dim as integer as well. The same thing would have worked. After that, you have these different types that are there. Then let me come to some more important examples. So we come to, this is just the declaration part and the basic stuff. Let's come to the important bit. Okay, I'm not able to think of what topic to show you. Wait, let me look at it in the table of content. Something that will make sense to you. Wait. Okay, let's say the for loop, right? So they've explained what a for loop is. This is the first example that we did. They said you're declaring what I is. You're declaring how many times the loop shall execute, which is I equal to 1 to 10. And then you're declaring, this basically just shows you the result inside the code window itself, right? Like we were putting the value in a cell, they're putting the code in the code window. Now, this is something I've already explained to you. You have learned it. Now, using this book, you can learn something more. For example, you can use something called step. What does it mean? It means that the counter is incremented by 1, obviously, because it went from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. But if I want to go from 1 to 3 to 5 to 7 to 9, like this, how do I do this? I put a step 2, like this. If you want to go backwards, then you can put a step -2. That means you will go from I is equal to 10 to 1. That means it will go from 10, 8, 6, 4. Like, you know, when sometimes you want to go backwards, like here you're doing -1, right? Okay. Then I also showed you, because Abhinav had asked me, how do you do this? So you can also use a select case instead of using an if statement when you have a very large number of arguments. Okay. So see, that's the idea. Like this book is, of course, meant for developers who already know all these topics. This is like a reference for us. So some of these topics by the end will get like super complicated, but that's the point. You're not supposed to read it. In fact, you know, somewhere in this book, it has already also been written. Don't read this book from chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in an order. You should read it in a scattered manner. Whatever topic you feel is important to you, to your line of work, you should focus on that. And the best way of doing this is just to go to the table of content and see what do you feel is important to you. You know, for example, some people might say, I don't know, maybe working with files and folders are more important for me. Somebody might say, I want to focus on some financial calculations, so I want to focus on factorials. You know, so like this, you can just pick the topics that are important for you and you can focus on that. And you can also search. So if you're searching for user forms, you can even search where all user forms have been written, right? So like this is a best practice for user forms. And they're given different ideas of how, like this is a user form that has been created along with a cancel button. So all the user forms that I showed you, if you remember, only had an OK on it, but this is how you can create a cancel button as well, right? Like this. And see, all of these can just be copied and pasted. That's the best part. You don't have to learn anything, but you should, because otherwise you will never be able to modify them. Okay? And don't worry if most of these topics are irrelevant to you or you find them too complicated. Even I have not learned or understood every single page because it's not really important for my line of work. So depending on what is important to you, you can simply search for it. So you can simply Google this. This is, you can just search for, this is the website, books goalkicker.com. All the books are free of cost. And these are some of the best books that you will find on the internet. I don't think anything else will be useful for you. Like they only cover programming languages. But I mean, if at all you feel in the future you want to pick up something else, you can. There are two different books they have. They have an Excel VBA and they have a VBA. I'm not really sure what the difference between both of them is. Let me just come to this one as well. Let me see if it is different. Oh, of course, what am I saying? So Excel VBA, I think, I'm so sorry, Excel VBA will be more relevant to you. Do you see this? Find the last non-empty cell in a column, the one that I showed you. What is my last row? Do you see these codes are available here? So literally every single code that you want will be available in the book. You don't really have to go online and search for anything. Right? So I hope this is making you feel a lot more comfortable, because if you're worried, oh my God, after the session is over, how will I search for something online? Of course, when you search online, you do find it, but in the book, you will definitely find it. Right? So I'm done from my side in terms of the topics that I wanted to cover. I think we've done quite a lot. We did a basic error handler. We did input boxes. We did user forms. I showed you how to save modules, XLAM files. Showed you how you can modify codes, how you can record it using absolute and relative recording. And then I also gave you a little example of how to write functions. Even the functions for you is going to be very rare that you will need it. I know it looks very nice, but functions have a lot of different challenges. So we end up not using them very often, right? And of course, we did the example on pivot tables and charts, which again might be very important for you. Okay. So I'm open for questions, anyone. Okay, there's something on the chat window. Does it cover R? What, the website? I'm not sure. No. R, Python is there, but that by that means R should also be there. Python is there. I'm not sure why R is not there. No, R is there. Yeah, R is there. Okay. And these are large books. R is 400 pages. This is Python is 700 pages. So they do cover a lot of topics. Okay. Isn't it amazing? We do these, we purchase these books online, and literally you notice that everything is available. The problem is that it's very difficult to pick up these books, because these books assume that you know all the basics. They don't explain things on a platter. They assume that they will explain it one time and they assume you understand it perfectly, right? So they're a little difficult to work with, but you should take it as a challenge. What do you mean when you say is it for the users also?
I mean, not the R developers. I mean, users like us who just want to use the programming codes and languages for our own inputs.
Not really. Like, even if you look at the topics here, you notice that you don't really notice any visuals and statistics and all that. It's mostly about the programming side. Like, you do have ggplot and all, but
you have scatterplot, you have ANOVA and all.
Like I said, you can just let me open it and see. I don't work on R, so I will not be able to comment on it. Let's see. So if I say ggplot, hey, but इसमें I think visuals नहीं होंगे. इसमें सिर्फ visuals भी हैं. Perfect. Okay. So you can give it a shot. So goal kicker books are like or hate. Some people love them. Some people absolutely hate them because they find it too complicated. But I feel the language is a little. It is a little technical. Like when you really read it, and it's very professional. So they don't engage the audience. They don't explain it in a manner that you feel like reading it. It's everything is very to the point, right? But I guess that's a good thing as well. Right. Excellent. If you want to learn more, I will recommend one channel to you on YouTube. It's called. Okay, I don't know what it is called. I don't remember what it is called. Let me search. So VBA, it's called this one, Excel Macro Mastery, right? Right, so there's a guy called Paul Carey, absolutely fantastic. And I mean, you should definitely follow him. Paul Kelly. So he has a number of videos and very short videos. I mean, some of them are short, some of them are long, but he explains very nicely, like tips and tricks. So rather than focusing on the learning like a course where he says, okay, topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, you notice he really talks about how to remember, how to use specific examples, what are areas you should focus on, stuff like that, which I really like. So look at this. So he has given a video on how to write readable codes. So he doesn't have a lot of content, but I mean, even if you watch this, I think you will learn a lot. Other than this, Paul Kelly, there's another website called Owlwise. Yeah, maybe you can look. They have their own course. It doesn't cover everything, obviously, but they talk about user forms in a lot of detail. And I like it. Like when I was learning many, many years back, this was the one that I followed. Way back in, I think, 2015 when I started working. This is what I followed when I was learning. You will have to spend a lot of time on this. The course is 102 lectures. But by the time you end it, you do learn quite a lot. So if you notice, it explains a lot of different topics to you. Right? And you can even find these files and codes on the website if you go. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to send this file to you. I will obviously share the recordings. In fact, as a matter of fact, I'll also share the books with you. I'll share a few additional books with you as well. Anything else you would like to ask? See, at the end of the day, you guys have to work with your own data sets. You have to create your own problem and then try to solve it. Because like if I share a financial data with you, try to think of the ways you can improve it for the user. Like yesterday, I showed you how you can add a row at the bottom, how you can shift the sum, how you can add automatic conditional formatting, again, something we did yesterday. These are the sort of examples that you can think about, how to make a chart, how to make a pivot. At the end of the day, this is what you do on Excel. You put more records, you make a pivot table, you make charts, and you conditionally format it. There really is nothing more than that. Formulas can simply be recorded, so you don't need to write it in the VBA code. The only part is where you write a formula, remember, if it says A1 colon B2 and you want B2 to be dynamic, then you have to break it into different parts and then concatenate it. For reference, you can look at the files that I will be sharing with you, the ones that we have worked on. And I think even if you manage to practice all of this, you will feel very comfortable. So excellent. That would be all from my side. If you have any questions, you can ask. And when you start practicing, please, I'm always available, one phone call away. Wherever you get stuck, see, you will get stuck. There will be errors. Don't, just because in my case, in 3 days, there were probably 7, 10, 15 errors that came, don't think errors will not happen. Errors happen all the time. Developers sometimes say that 90% of our time goes into dealing with errors. Only 10% of the time we are writing the code. So don't worry if you're making mistakes, if you're not doing it correctly the first time. When you finally do it, that moment of glory is amazing. Right? So thank you once again. I hope that this session was useful. And now you started a Visual Basic journey. You know something that very few Excel users will ever know. And that already is a great starting point for you. And what is important now is for you to start practicing. And then remember, Record Macro is there free of cost. The best way to learn is just to click on Record Macro, keep on doing something, go back to the code window and see what all was recorded. Nothing will teach you better than that. Right? Excellent. So thank you everyone once again, and have a good day. I'll be closing the chat window now.